Okay, for this video I wanted to cover the IRS Form 8936. It is completed by taxpayers to take a federal tax credit for the purchase of a qualified plug-in electric vehicle during the year. So I'm going to run through the 8936, how to complete it with a Form 1040. I've also got the IRS website up here, which provides information on how much of a credit you can take depending on what type of vehicle you purchase. And then, as always, I've got a slide here that covers some of the background details on what this credit is. So we'll start with the slide, and then we'll go through the tax return example. So who's eligible for this credit? Well, if you purchase an electric vehicle, and it's a vehicle that is one that you plug in, right? So it's a vehicle that's charged based on or using an external power source, right? So park it in your garage, plug it into the wall. If you have a vehicle that runs like that, you might be eligible for this credit. So the vehicle specs, it's got to be new, right? So it can't be a used vehicle. The vehicle has to be propelled by an electric motor that draws electricity from the battery, right? And it has a capacity of not less than 4 kilowatt hours and is capable of being charged by an external source. And the gross vehicle weight is got to be under 14,000 pounds. So we're really talking about just passenger auto vehicles here. Now the credit doesn't apply to semi-electric vehicles, right? So those vehicles are the types that they do partial battery power, then partial, actual fuel. So they run on gasoline. If you have that type of electric vehicle, you're not eligible for this type of credit. What they're really after here is the plug-in vehicles, okay? Now, the best way to see if your vehicle is eligible is to obviously talk to the manufacturer before you buy, but you can also visit this website. So if you go to the irs.gov website, plug-in vehicle credit amounts, I'll pull that up here really quickly. It has some background information on what qualifies, and then there's a manufacturer index here that has all the manufacturers and then all the types of vehicles that qualify underneath. So, for example, if you're looking to buy an Audi, you can click the Audi button and then scroll through here and see which model, vehicle description, and then the eligible credit amount would apply. Okay, so let's go back to the slide really quickly here. So the credit can be claimed for both personal or business use vehicles, right? And the example we're going to look at, it's going to be personal use, but you can be eligible under both circumstances. And it is a non-refundable credit. Okay, so non-refundable means that the credit is limited to your tax liability. So if you don't owe a lot of tax for the year, you can get a credit to the extent you have taxes, but it can't go over that, right? So it's a non-refundable, and that the IRS isn't going to cut you a check for buying the vehicle, but you can get a dollar for dollar offset against your tax liability. So let's look at the example here. We have John. He buys a new 2021 BMW. The model is a 530e X-Drive, right? So he buys this during the 2021 calendar year. And then the dealership talks to him about these potential credits. They say it's a potential electric vehicle tax credit because it is a plug-in electric vehicle, right? And so obviously they tell you, well, we're not giving out tax advice, but talk to your tax preparer, talk to your tax advisor, and see if you can claim this credit. So John bought that vehicle for $65,000 in March and started driving it for personal purposes immediately, right? So it's a personal use vehicle. So John goes ahead and he visits the IRS website. He looks at the vehicle, and then he finds it is eligible, and the available credit is $5,836, right? So what John would do is he goes to the IRS website, he scrolls down to BMW, and then he finds the type of vehicle he bought, right? So he bought a 2021 BMW E X-Drive, and this is the amount of the credit that he is eligible to take on his federal tax return, so $5,836, okay? Now, John's total liability, after we look at the return, you'll see it's about $13,000, which means he's going to be eligible for the full credit, right? Because the credit amount does not exceed his tax liability. So let's look at the form 8936. It's relatively straightforward. We have the Part 1 information on the credit. So year, make, and model, right? He bought a 2021 BMW 530e X-Drive. enter the VIN number of the vehicle, and the date it was placed in service, right? Now in 4A, it asks here if it's a two-wheeled vehicle, enter the cost of the vehicle. If not, so it has at least 4, see the instructions. So two-wheeled would be if you purchase a motorcycle, for example. In this case, it has 4 wheels, and so the instructions say, go to that website and look up the amount of the credit, right? And that's what we've done. Now the phase-out percentage here, what they're asking there is if you bought a vehicle that has already sold effectively too many units, the federal government is phasing out who can take the credit. So for example, right now, as of 2022, only Tesla and General Motors are in this space. So if you look at General Motors down here, notice how it has General Motors phase out initiated. This is because GM has sold in excess of 200,000 units, and so enough taxpayers have already claimed the credit where the federal government doesn't want to subsidize them anymore. The same thing goes for Tesla, right? So if we go down here, you'll see Tesla Inc. phase outs initiated. So the amount of credit available for a lot of these vehicles post 2020 is going to be 0. Okay, so that's the other thing to keep in mind. If you're looking to get a credit buying a Tesla or one of the GM vehicles, you might not get it. But in this case, John purchased a vehicle that doesn't have any phase out. So the phase out percentage doesn't apply. It's just 100%, meaning he gets a full 5836. And so there's the tentative credit, right? Multiply 4A by 4B, and he gets the full 5,836. Now, part 2 would be completed if this was purchased for business use, right? In this case, we're not using it for business use. It's personal use, so we can leave this blank. Then in part 3, now we have complete this section for the personal use part of the vehicle. So we have 5836. And everything just foots down here to where we have a full amount of the credit's going to be available, so we're not phasing any part out for business use. And then on line 20, it's asking us enter our total tax liability. So that's the 13,893. So if I jump up here to the Form 1040, we can see John's return here. He's got some wages, investment income. And so based on his total tax liability or taxable income of 82,465, his total taxes owed are going to be 13,893. That's what they're asking for on the Form 8936. So looking for your total tax liability before factoring in any credits. Okay. So on the 8936, we enter the total tax liability, and then here we have the amount of the credit that is eligible, because again, we're not taking a credit in excess of what our tax liability is. So we have the 5,836 there, and that's reported first on Schedule 3. All right, so if we go to Schedule 3, so Schedule 3, Part 1, non-refundable credits, line 6F, we've got our vehicle tax credit there, so 5,836. And then the total on Schedule 3 is ultimately flowing up to page 2 of the 1040, right here. So line 20, Schedule 3, line 8, 5836, that's the vehicle tax credit we're getting. So the 5836 is offset against the 13,893, and so the total amount of taxes that he actually owes for the year is only $8,057 because he's getting a full credit for the vehicle, the plug-in electric vehicle tax credit. Okay? So that covers the 8936. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave me a comment, and I look forward to seeing you again on the next video. Thank you.